Hello. Welcome to this webinar, creating a seamless student onboarding experience. We've just hit our 100 participants, so we decided to start. If you have any colleagues who is about to join, please give them a nudge, tell them to walk quicker with their cup of coffee or tea. And we shall move straight on to introducing the team today. So my name is Oliver Matthews. I work for Uni Solutions, and I've spent the last 20 years working in higher education at different universities. And today I am joined by Tanya Roquette and Sean O'Day, and they're going to say a couple of words to introduce themselves now. Tanya, over to you first.
Thank you, Oliver. Hi, everyone. My name is Tanya Roquette, and I'm a VP at Full Fabric. I actually started my career in higher ed more than 15 years ago, first as marketing admissions director for an MBA program. And now at Full Fabric, I have the pleasure to be part of digital transformation projects for several universities. So very happy to be here today and hopefully share some of the learnings and best practices that I've learned along the way. Sean?
Thanks, Tanya. My name's Sean O'Day. I'm the Senior Partnership Manager here at Unibuddy. Been working in ed tech of all forms for the last 6 years, and before that I was actually a chemistry teacher for a couple of years, working with high school students in London. But yeah, I've been working with Unibuddy for the last 4 years and support all of our clients right across the APAC region. Initially, last couple of years have been primary focus with supporting our Canadian partners, and of late have been working more so with institutions right throughout Europe and the UK. So we'll be sharing my experience working with all of those institutions and how Unibuddy supports them also.
Great, thank you very much. So our topic for today is student onboarding. I think everyone's here because you're working with recruitment, with admissions. You understand that the moment you give a student an offer, the game's not over. For those of you that know me, I mean, I've spent the last 10 years working at Frankfurt School in Germany, and this was a constant challenge that we had to, as with many universities, to put the hard work into recruiting students, to bring those leads through, to talk to them for months, if not years. And then you get an offer sent out to the student, you finally admitted them. That's not the end of the story. You may have anything from a couple of months up to a year, maybe more if they're deferred students, between when they get an offer and when they become a student on campus. And it's not a simple case of, well, I've got an offer, I'm super happy. The student is going to go through all sorts of emotions over the next few weeks, months, before they finally turn up on campus. And maybe just to illustrate that, this is an oversimplistic example of how their emotional journey is going to look. There will be hopefully a high when they receive the offer, but they're going to go through a variety of different emotions, whether it's when they're paying their deposits, connecting with, is it on a WhatsApp chat? Are they going to a live event? These typically tend to be very positive moments. And then before they turn up on campus, you've got all of the logistics pains of sorting out visas, of accommodation, getting themselves ready for study. They're going to have all sorts of highs and lows during this journey. And at any given moment, a low could be a point where you lose your students. And that's the reality, is that onboarding is not just about efficiency. It's not just about how you support your students. It's also about student retention. And it's about whether you're going to see the person you made an offer to, even if they've paid a deposit. Are you really going to see them on the first day of class on campus? Now we've got a helpful little example here. This was a survey that was carried out in 2022, focusing mostly on Western Europe, but also on Australian students, 2,500 students rating their onboarding experience with the university. And as you can see, sure, 36% said it was great, 45% good, 19% fair or poor. And realistically, if a student with all that goodwill, all that positivity towards their upcoming university, the place they're paying a deposit, they can only manage a good. 45% are saying it is good, it wasn't excellent. This is critical because that first impression, that onboarding, the logistics you're providing them with, this is their first interaction with your university. So if you're already at the point where they're saying it was good, it could have been better, this is setting them up for that emotion, the feeling they have when they first arrive on campus. They should be on a perfect high, but if they've just had a mediocre support onboarding, they're not going to have the same level of positivity. And again, you may drop the students. This is a moment where your yield management, your ability to retain the students is weak. And I think I don't really have to go into too much detail on what the challenges are. We've all seen this. You've got a lot of information to hand over. You've got the engagement, the retention, and we've got competitors. Of course, when you lose a student, it's for one simple reason, and that's often that there's a better offer out there. Whether it's a university, they've gone directly to a competitor, or have they received a better job offer? Have they started looking elsewhere? Have their plans changed? We also have issues with our staffing and training, communication, a lot of messages go in different directions. And of course, there's the technology. And that's why it's also great today that the two key panelists we have, Tanya and Sean, both technology partners who are specializing in this. Now, the positives, and this is where we all want to be at the end of this, we want to increase our conversion, increase retention, to achieve 100% of admitted students into students on campus. That is the dream. And to foster student engagement, to increase their satisfaction, and overall to start them on a perfect high at the beginning of their studies. Okay, so that's enough about me. I'm going to hand straight over to the first speaker, who's going to take us through fostering student belonging.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, thanks, Oliver. And yeah, really excited to kind of share some of the latest research that Unibuddy has been doing into student belonging and how you can be supporting that in 2024. So yeah, our latest research was looking at how students want to interact with higher education teams and the role that student confidence plays along their enrollment journey. At the end of 2023, we conducted a pulse survey of more than 1,000 higher educational students across Europe and North America, drawing on their experiences of applying to and enrolling in colleges and universities. We also supplemented this data with a survey of 200 higher education enrollment professionals, people in similar roles to yourselves, working across recruitment, marketing, admissions from a total of 23 different countries. So to kick things off, I'm hoping we can get the poll question pop up now. But one of the more, actually no, we've gone on. There's a little bit of a clue here, but not to worry. That's how polls work on Zoom webinars. But yeah, quick question to if you can't see the answer, how many students do you think in this poll paid deposits at multiple institutions? I can't see all the options, but you might have a bit of a clue there. Let's see if that's wrapped up. Okay. Less than 30%. Was almost, yeah, the majority went with that. The next 30% saw this. Might have seen the answer or had a bit of a feeling that it was higher than expected, and then have a handful who thought it was more than 50% or over 70%. But yeah, no, it's a pretty scary reality. How students are kind of making decisions now and what they're willing to do to kind of leave that decision to the very last minute. So firstly, something we're all fully aware of, something that Oliver kind of already hinted at, but higher education is becoming an increasingly crowded landscape. There are more providers globally than ever before, and students have options all over the world. Higher education was once considered the best way to a well-paid, fulfilling career, but that's changed. Since COVID, alternative paths are a deliberate part of the decision-making process. Students and their families are no longer tied to a linear path from high school to university, and the perception of value has decidedly changed. Students want to keep their options from the beginning, considering and applying to multiple institutions. And the uncertainty in predicting student numbers feeds all the way down the funnel. One of the most surprising findings, as I kind of hinted to earlier, a significant number of students are now paying deposits at multiple institutions. Of the students that we surveyed, we found that 44% of those that had to pay a deposit said that they were paying more than one. And finally, the perceived value of higher education is waning, with only 28% saying that higher education is essential. Competing with alternative pathways is as much of a challenge for you today as competing with other higher education institutions for enrollments. If we move on to the next slide now, Oliver, I'd like to kind of dig into the current mindset of students a little more here. So our research indicated that 47% of students want every single piece of their outreach to be personalized to them. We're seeing that students' expectations are greater than ever before. These students know what they want and they're being extremely demanding. They expect to see that return on their educational investments. Right from the very start of their journey, our data shows that they expect total personalization. And some students will go so far as to cross an institution off their list if they feel the marketing or messaging is cringy in any way. So how are you meant to deliver more personalization than ever before, given the environment that you're working within and what tools you have at your disposal? So looking at the next slide, speaking of which, I wanted to kind of dig into the topic of your tech stack and cover off one more area of research that I think is particularly interesting here. When we talk about leveraging technology to support with student demands, to support with bandwidth of your teams and help make your engagement more effective, is this something that's happening already? We see that institutions are spending a fortune on different tech tools to try and solve these challenges. But our research suggests it simply isn't working. Surprisingly, 39% of institutions use more than 5 tech tools right the way throughout the student journey. That's a lot of logins and a lot of invoices as well to work through. So let's have a think about what these tools are giving you. 68% say that this tech offers limited or no insight into how prospective students are feeling or what they're thinking. 66% say that it gives limited or no help in predicting student enrollments. And students can tell. We saw that nearly half of students said that most institutions they spoke to didn't keep them engaged, and 41% were unimpressed by the marketing or advertising efforts of institutions they did engage with. So moving on to the next slide, and enough of the doom and gloom. Sorry about that. But mind you, I do think it's rather interesting data to share, and more than happy to kind of share the report with you afterwards as to kind of dig into it yourselves. But I want to start sharing some data that actually sounds promising for you. So 70% of enrollment professionals report that they understand how their prospective students are feeling. And that makes sense. Admissions, marketing, enrollment professionals are in this world day after day and have met thousands of prospective and current students. Also, we see that another 94% say that they are data-driven. And that's great news. We know that the majority of schools are collecting mountains and mountains of data points about their students. These numbers sound great and show a high confidence in the tools that they're using, but something doesn't quite add up. When we asked further questions to dig deeper into the idea of being data-driven, and we found that 80% are analyzing just some or none of the data that they collect. Only 32% of our respondents even collect information about students' thoughts or their feelings. A smaller 20% use and analyze that data, and 76% report having little to no visibility into student enrollment journeys. So on to the next slide here. For this section, I wanted to share some thoughts on the way forward and how we can look at solving many of the challenges that we face today. We've spoken about how competition is fierce, demands are sky high, and how you're all trying to do a lot more with a lot less. For students to feel truly engaged by the recruitment and onboarding strategies they see, we really need to rethink how and what we're communicating with them. So looking at what matters, students see higher education differently now more than they did a decade ago, and options are more varied than ever. So it's important to change your approach. Let's communicate what matters to them. Students care about outcomes and don't necessarily see higher education as the most direct route to a great career. The priority should be convincing them otherwise with evidence, with case studies or students that you have who are able to share this with them. Moving on to the next slide quickly. I know we've touched on it previously, but we see that enrollment professionals are overwhelmed and overworked. You're working with smaller budgets, and most people I speak to these days are finding that their targets are higher than they've ever been before. So streamlining is really key here. Focusing on those end-to-end solutions and prioritizing those that offer the insights and connections that you're looking for. And finally, if we go on to the next slide, talk about how you can capture that student attention. Looking at the onboarding experience for students, most of the communications they receive from you and tasks that they need to complete can be very admin heavy, typically kind of boring, and can pull away from the excitement of starting this new chapter of their life. By offering opportunities to easily participate in a highly engaged institutional community, you can build the connections that these students are looking for and create the chances for prospective students to feel part of that community right from the start. From our research, we saw that 77% of students found speaking to a current student helpful on their journey. And over 2/3 of students who didn't get the chance to connect with either current students or fellow incoming classmates felt they really missed out. So on to the next slide from here. Based on these trends that we're seeing, our recommendation is to slow down in order to speed up. Accept that the tasks you're attempting to do are incredibly complex. Understanding the student journey is not a linear research pattern, and the idea of slowing down can help make sense of the chaos. So here are a few steps that we recommend you take. First of all is streamlining. So if you streamline your tech to work within your existing systems, be strict about which new tools you invest in and focus on those that will free you up rather than bogging you down. When you invest in new solutions, you can look for evergreen opportunities and determine if you can use new to supersede the old tech that may have been brought in by team members of the past or are becoming dated. We also see that building stronger human connections, professionals can focus efforts on the most impactful touch points with prospective students, the moments when they actually change or make up their final decisions, if you're able to triage these students to the most impactful intervention for them. These are the moments to focus human resources whilst letting automation and sometimes even AI assist with the rest. And higher education enrollment professionals we're seeing are excited for this change, with 49% saying they're looking forward to AI's potential to free them up from many of the manual interactions that they need to do. And then finally is to do with growing visibility. It's important to find value in the mountains of data that you already have, to take stock of the data at your fingertips and look at how that data can have as much power as the flashy stuff. This includes assessing what you're collecting today and what you would like to collect moving forwards. So laying down the foundations to use it effectively and finding quick wins where you can. Again, looking at AI and where you can make this mountain of data much easier to interpret. So from here, actually, Oliver, if you don't mind just going back one slide, just going to briefly introduce anybody for those who haven't worked with us or don't know about us currently, but we offer a number of different tools. What we're famous for is the chat solution, which is how institutions are enabling their prospective or incoming students to connect with current student ambassadors who can share their experiences based off of perhaps the course they're studying, the social life, where they're from, what it's been like moving from a specific country to the city or country that they're studying in. But we also have a number of different tools, one being our discovery tool that integrates with Keystone and study portals, as well as UCAS to help you nurture more qualified leads. We've also recently rolled out an AI assistant that can essentially answer incoming questions from prospective students through kind of AI and offering kind of more personalized responses to nurture those leads and convert them into applications. And then finally is the community piece, which is how institutions are connecting all of their incoming students together such that they're able to kind of make their first friends, figure out who their classmates will be, who they'll be living with pre-arrival. And all the way, this is all in one integrated solution that's offering kind of data and insights off the back of all the conversations that are taking place. Going a little bit further, If we go on to the next slide now here, Oliver, thank you. For the Unibuddy chat, it's a very simple platform to implement. It's a case of taking typically your student ambassadors, they'd set up a profile, and then we embed the Unibuddy platform into your website, and then any incoming or prospective student can easily find the best person to speak to, perhaps based off course or country, and chat with them about their experiences, which will help them on their way to make the final decision. And then if we go on to the next part, with Unibuddy Community, this is the safe official hub that you can provide to all of your admitted students, through them being able to kind of connect with one another and make those initial friendships, or people who they'll be studying with will be more confident in their decision to accept their offer, and also settle and go through orientation much more smoothly. So that pretty much wraps up the Unibuddy side of things. One other thing I'd like to note is that we are here to help along the way. I know on the face of it can look like a lot of work to implement, but we have a lot of experience in doing this, working with 500 institutions more than 500 around the world. So please do reach out if you have any questions. We'd also love to share more about what we do and why we're so passionate about this topic. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Tanya, or actually back to Oliver. There we go.
Exactly. So thank you very much, Sean. Just a quick note on questions. So if you do have questions for Sean today, please add them to the Zoom chat, and we'll either be taking them at the end. We'll go through all of the relevant questions for the seminar, or either Tanya or Sean will get back to you directly if it's something very specific to your institution. So you can start leaving chat messages, questions at any point. Okay, thank you. In that case, I'm going to hand over now to Tanya to take us into the next section.
Thank you, Oliver. Thank you, Sean. Very interesting insights that reinforce the importance of student onboarding. And I want to start by defining together with you, what is student onboarding? Because I often feel that people confuse or use the same term for student onboarding and student orientation, which both refer to the process of integrating a new student. But student orientation is an actual event, a phase of, and the student onboarding should be really about the journey. So it's not just the first week of studies or a form that students have to fill in during enrollment. It's a dynamic and ongoing process that is a key part of the student journey. And as seen before, is a foundation for future student success. So in my opinion, and the next slide will show you that you should start, and I think also the previous presentation showed that, you should start by reflecting and identifying the key touch points in your onboarding process. So the entire process of retaining and welcoming your students from offer holder all the way until start of studies, or even beyond. Some clients go through all the way to first month or first semester of studies to ensure there are no dropouts during that phase as well. But nowadays, and it's still quite common to see universities that stop the admissions process at the point of offer letter or deposit. And then communication only is restarted by the program management team a few weeks before the studies. And obviously that's a great mistake, because those students are in a critical moment where we've seen that lows and high points. And so if we're not communicating with them during this stage, if we're not mapping their engagement, we completely lose track, and we don't know how many students will be arriving on the first day of students. So to create an effective onboarding program, it's imperative to identify all these onboarding steps, all the touch points, which will be different from institution to institution, from program to program, but also to track what actions are required, both from staff and student side, what teams are involved, which is often a challenge, because during this phase, there's multiple teams involved. And so communication quite often is quite inconsistent throughout these stages. And once students start going through this process, you can start tracking how engaged they are in each phase, which phase do we need to invest more, and also recognize signals that show if there's a possibility of withdrawal or dropout. So what makes a student onboarding process effective? So there are several things that you need to consider to really plan and create an effective student onboarding. And the first one is the digital onboarding. And I'll deep dive a bit more on this. But universities, obviously nowadays in this increasingly digital world, need to offer a digital onboarding platform from the point of student enrollment. And those first impressions count. And so that's a very important part that we'll dig deeper. Multiple communications channels. It's paramount to create a communication plan to each of those steps and involve different channels to ensure students are reached effectively. Also, personalization. Sean showed very previously how students nowadays expect that personalized content, regardless of the channel used. So universities need to invest in personalized welcome experience that really cater to the needs and interests of each student persona and each program. Also provide early access to the community, and this is whether you use Unibuddy or you offer peer mentorship programs that connect students with faculty or student ambassadors. Providing early access to the community really creates that strong emotional bond and makes also the experience more human and more relatable. So that's very important. And academic and social integration, has been identified as a key predictor to drop out by students. So assisting students, and even before the start of the studies, assisting students in the integration of their academic and social spheres is very important. And this can be done in the form of academic advising, counseling services, connecting students with similar interests, offering inclusive events, extracurricular activities, and obviously frequent communication as well. And last but not least, continuous support. It's very important to implement ongoing support systems that are tracking the progress of students and make sure they feel supported throughout this whole onboarding and throughout their studies as well. So I want to now delve more into digital onboarding, but before I would like to ask you a very quick yes and no question. So you should now see a quick question, very simple. Do you offer nowadays a digital onboarding hub or portal for admitted students? Yes or no? So we have about 40% of participants responding. So let's try and get closer to 160. Okay, 80. Let's closer. Try a few more. I'll wait a few more seconds to see if everyone, okay. It should be fairly soon. This is what we see, 60-40. So 60% of the audience here today offer a digital onboarding hub and portal for admitted students. 40% do not offer a digital onboarding for admitted students. So you should see the results now in your screen. And why is this important? Let me go back to the slides to make sure. Okay, so why is it important? And I'm glad to see the majority of you do offer some sort of digital onboarding hub or portal. And I think there's no doubt that digital experience is nowadays extremely important to students and directly impact the perception of what's currently available to them and what their expectation of the future experience is. And these are some interesting insights from the Higher Education Digital Experience Report published by the Great State. And it shows 67% of students expect their university's digital experience to be as good as Facebook, Amazon, or Netflix. So we're talking about consumer technology that they use on their day-to-day, and they expect that same level of experience from universities today. And more importantly, another very interesting stat is that 50% of students say the quality of their digital experience was a key factor in their choice. So the quality of the digital experience before they start their studies. So that includes the admissions, the onboarding phase. And so it shows that that onboarding process, which is often done before they even arrive on campus and quite a lot of times digitally, is critical in ensuring a high conversion rate and ensuring that you meet your enrollment targets. So when it comes to digital onboarding, and I completely agree with Sean that we see universities using multiple tools, and particularly if there's no integration, there's no insight and it becomes very different. So At Full Fabric, and so the next slide shows you a little bit of an idea of what we recommend in terms of digital onboarding. So we are adamant that universities should always have a hub to guide and nurture students throughout the onboarding journey. And what does that mean? So it should be a digital platform where students can access all relevant onboarding information, but also where they can complete whatever tasks you require from them, the enrollment form, signed enrollment form, make payments, all in a digital format. So at Full Fabric, we have this concept of dynamic content. So the admissions portal that the students use to apply, to start and submit their application becomes the admitted portal, and students can now see their offer and start their onboarding journey. But one question I often get from existing clients and from other universities that we speak on the day-to-day is, what kind of content should you add in this portal? What do students want? Because there's also overwhelming information, and particularly as we've seen before, if they're doing this for multiple universities, if you're just sending emails or sending information by email, that's not enough. So here's some general basic ideas that we often see as important. But I also say that the best source of inspiration for your content is what students want. So whether you survey your recent students, the ones have gone through the process previously, on what they felt was valuable, what they were missing in terms of information, that's a great source of inspiration. But also the frequently asked questions that you get from students at this stage. So you're obviously getting lots of questions by phone, by email, by WhatsApp. And so those are obviously the things that people are missing out. And I also think that universities can get quite creative at this point and find different ways to deliver this content. So some obvious one, the students and alumni success stories can be in a video format that you embed again in a portal. You can send personal SMS to thank the candidate after they do certain actions. So create workflows, for example, as soon as they pay the deposit, send him a thank you. And the time is very important. So timely send SMSs after certain actions is very important. Another great example I've seen, it's actually a US university doing this for undergraduate medical students. They actually structured their onboarding as a boot camp. So the students were entering the boot camp, and every week there was something new for them to do. There was an email workflow with new content on the admitted portal with specific actions that they had to take, sometimes a video that they had to review, sometimes a form that they had to fill in. So specific actions to take the student throughout the journey in a small phased and planned way, but also allowing the university to track their engagement. At the end of the day, what you want here is to make the onboarding process user-friendly, but also keep the student motivated to choose your university and start their studies on a high note. So last, but definitely not least, how do you measure this? First, actively seek feedback from new students and use this feedback to make improvements and see what additional information, where can you make improvements. But ultimately, once you define the key touch points of the student onboarding, it is essential to measure your conversion rates in each of these steps. The majority of times we're doing the yield, so the percentage of admitted to enrolled, and there's plenty of data out there. If you look at NASAC's most recent admissions report, the average yield rate in the US for first-time undergraduate students, so bear that in mind, was 33.6. But then you see the difference. If you look at prestigious schools, their yield rates are about 85%. But I also think there's a lot of value in breaking it down, that conversion, into smaller steps and see where do we actually need to invest more in our onboarding process. But I also get this question a lot, but what's a healthy conversion rate and yield rate? So to give you some average across Full Fabric clients, across bachelor programs, we're looking at 58%. So the average clients that use Full Fabric for bachelor students, so from admitted to student enrolled, and across masters and MBAs is 76%. So obviously it's a little more niche, but these are some benchmarks that you can use to see how healthy your onboarding process and your process and your conversion rate from admitted to enrolled is. And I would like to end with this quote and to leave you time to ask questions, which we'll be happy to take. I'd like to end with this quote by the famous Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel. And I think this is right on point about what the goal of the onboarding process is, which is creating a last positive and memorable experience for students and making sure they start their studies on a high note, all enthusiastic, and that hopefully we don't lose anyone at this point. And that's it from me. I think I did well on time, Oliver. Is that right?
Yes, you did. That was actually perfect. Thank you very much, Tanya. Okay, so now we have a chance for questions from the audience. So feel free to ask anything that's directly within the presentation or general information you'd like about Full Fabric, about Unibody, and I will feed any questions into our two panelists to see what they have to say. So let's have a quick look. Okay, so first question then is for Sean. I think this is a useful one. Okay, so Sean, can you give us any good case study examples of a successful implementation of Unibody? You said you're working with 500 different schools.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we have quite a range right across the world. Unibody started in the UK. Right now, we've got about 85% of UK institutions using the chat to a student or community building tools at some point in the enrollment journey. But yeah, some really good case studies. So the most recent one was with Middlesex University, and they have had the kind of core chat to a student tool up and running for several years, I think 2 or 3 years now. But in the last year, they decided to roll out this new community element, which was primarily for admitted students as soon as they got their offer, to ensure that they felt that, you know, enabling them to kind of connect with their peers. Previously, they were doing the likes on kind of Facebook groups. They saw many students joining WhatsApp groups, even kind of looking through Reddit. They saw there were kind of large groups of students starting to connect through there, but they weren't really kind of having any oversight of it themselves, and they weren't able to track any engagement. So they decided to implement an official community space, which is something that Unibody offers. What they were able to see from that, after kind of seeing students chat to a student or join a community to connect with their classmates, they saw that 96% of admitted students who had engaged with current students or these communities, 96% of them went on to enroll. So it became one of the kind of lead indicators for them to know if a student were to arrive or not. And all in all, it did actually increase their kind of conversion rates and overall enrollments for the last intake.
Great, thank you. So I have another question here. This is actually for both panelists. Maybe we can start with Tanya. So do either of you find the dynamics of student onboarding changing either due to COVID or because of digitalization in society? There seems to be a movement back towards human contact.
I think there's actually a good mixture there, because yes, there is, people want the human connection, but at the same time, they now expect digitalization to be the norm. So I don't think people want to go back to having all events on site, and you see that on the type of events that students want, for example, more online webinars rather than open days. But yes, the human contact and the human and the personalization is very important, and I believe you should also offer opportunities for those, but also try and mirror that human contact and that personalization in a digital format. Because after COVID, what I feel is that expectation has not changed. That the digital onboarding, the digital tools are now the minimum expectation that students have. But I would love to see, Sean, what you think.
Yeah, no, I was going to say something very similar. Like, yeah, for Unibody especially, we grew quite significantly during COVID when people weren't able to go on campus and have those kind of in-person conversations with ambassadors or staff like they used to, and kind of what was their kind of basic expectations. Now that everyone can kind of return and are able to have these in-person interactions once again, we see that using these tech tools can only kind of enhance the whole experience by kind of offering it on a kind of a more scalable manner, in that if I'm not able to attend something in person, or if I want to continue the conversation, I'll ask more questions after I was there in person. Being able to use a digital tool such as Unibuddy is something that institutions are really benefiting from today. So whilst there's no way that it will ever kind of replace the in-person stuff, it's ensuring that the conversation can kind of continue after they're on campus or meeting you in person, and at the same time able to kind of gather you really useful insights and analytics off the back of all of it also.
Okay, thank you. I think the next question is quite an interesting one. It's from slightly more of a logistical point of view. What's the best indicator of a current student wanting to become an ambassador to support incoming students? That's quite an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, no, great question. I can see that from Paul. So typically, we'd recommend, or we see that our partners will actually kind of speak to members of faculty. They'll ask them kind of who their kind of best or number one students are. They're typically the ones who are going to be really good representatives for that course in particular. But then also, I mean, even if you're able to just kind of put job postings out there, Unibuddy supports with all of this. We've kind of got job templates, interview templates for you. You'll be surprised with just how many students, when you do ask them if they'd be willing to kind of share their experiences and support future students, how many of them are willing to do so. Alongside that, we also see many institutions will kind of include it as one of the requirements. If you were to accept a scholarship to study at any given institution, you're also going to have to kind of spend some time supporting future students, answering questions in this way also. So there's a range of different ways to do it. But yeah, I think to start with, I think definitely kind of speaking to faculty and getting their take on it. And yeah, I can also kind of send more. We've got a guide on how to start an ambassador program if this is something you want to do in the near future.
Okay, great. So next question, can you speak to the value of onboarding platforms for smaller institutions, particularly with smaller cohorts?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that, as I think quite often for smaller and niche institutions, the onboarding is even more important because that personalization is more than expected, is actually a USP for smaller institutions and small cohorts. So I see that a lot for smaller MBAs, smaller medical schools, law schools, the onboarding being the critical moment and for niche institutions. Sean, do you have any input on that if you want to?
Yeah, no, I think I also agree. Like we also work with many kind of just master's specific or MBA programs who do have very small cohorts, but kind of want to offer the most personalized support possible. And also, I mean, in that way, ensuring that they have a buddy of some sort who can kind of guide them through all the steps and can, even in their kind of orientation first semester side of things, having like a key contact who is a student rather than a member of staff is really important to really stand out from the crowd these days.
Great, thank you. And there was actually one other question regarding people wanting to follow up. This is quite a useful one for everyone else out there. So for the two panelists, if people want to contact you directly and have a chat to follow up, how would you prefer to be contacted?
So I just typed in a response on behalf of Sean and myself, but I'll let everyone know. So we'll send a thank you email, and there's actually a survey at the end of today's webinar, which we would love. It will be automatically here when we end the webinar, but there will be a follow-up email with a recording, some of the resources that we shared today, as well as our contact details. I'm also myself, and then that I'm talking about myself, I'm also very active on LinkedIn, so very happy to connect on LinkedIn, email, phone. But yeah, we'll share the contact details at the end.
Okay, great. We still have time for some last questions if anyone has any burning issues they'd like to dig into. Okay, if not, I would say to the two panelists, maybe let's start with Sean. Is there one thing you'd like to add, one kind of closing thought that you would have for all the schools still listening?
Yeah, no, I think the main thing is just making sure that you are doing everything you can to support your students, ensure they have all of the information available to kind of make the best decision for themselves, and in doing so, like standing out from the crowd, using your current students, your current community, because more often than not, that is going to be one of the biggest indicators for a student kind of settling in and feeling that they have the support network around them to thrive and be successful at your institution. So that's why we Unibuddy kind of exists. That's why institutions work with us typically. But yeah, more than happy to kind of speak with anyone on it in more detail and look at how it can support them in the future also.
Right. Thank you. And Tanya?
From my side is really do assess your admissions and your onboarding process. So identify those touch points and create kind of like at Full Fabric, we're passionate about designing the journeys, and so it's what we do when we onboard every client. So all clients here will probably say that it's actually one of the things that for us it's very important. Is it's not just about technology or the people or the process, it's all three together. And so by investing on the technology, but also on the process and having the right people, that's what will make you achieve your target numbers and provide a much better student experience. And so it's very important to start with that, define the process. And at Full Fabric, we help all our clients doing that, and then put in place the right workflows, the right technology, and the right people skill set to make sure you're hitting your enrollment targets and improving your conversion rates as well. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So we have one final survey then from Tanya for the closing.
Yeah, it's as soon as you end the webinar that will pop up. So it will be automatically done by Zoom.
Okay. Wonderful.
So,
then in that case, thank you very much to the panelists and to all of our audience. And I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.